were like bad characters. It was different.
Yeah, I think it's perfect. As I say, there are no rules, and I think it's perfectly all right to write a book in which there are no nice characters. But you have to be able to sympathise with them. I thought in this specific case, I thought it was politically a bit strange, because British Pakistanis, I'm not disputing the fact that there are huge problems in British Pakistani communities just as there are in other communities. But every writer has some kind of social responsibility. You're writing in a context. And if you are a British writer, and especially if you're a British Muslim or writer, the eyes of the media is on you. And you are taken as representative. And when you are just fulfilling the stereotypes that people are reading in the newspapers every day, this is what these people are doing. Because Pakistanis in Britain, unfortunately, they do sometimes kill their daughters. And also they are doctors and engineers and they do important work and they have friends and they do good things. We don't read about the good things in the newspapers, we always read about the bad things. So I would have hoped that a British Pakistani author would try to write a book which reflects a community which is diverse, which does bad things and does good things. And I felt that he emphasised the bad things and didn't show us any of the good things. For that reason I didn't like it politically, but he is a good writer. And that's my point, that if you have sympathy or empathy with your characters, it makes it a worthwhile book. Finally, preserve the strangeness of the obvious. Now, I talked a few moments ago about writing a scene from the point of view of an immigrant, or the point of view of somebody from the past, or somebody from the future, in order to see again, see what is familiar in an unfamiliar way. And here I'm just talking about the experience of being alive, in general. I mean, do you agree with me that it's a strange experience?
Yes.
Do you agree with me that, I mean, some people are looking bemused. Do you agree with me that it's a mystery?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
I mean, even those of us who are very certain about religion, for example, even those of us who feel that we know why we're here and where we're going, still, even for those people, it's a very strange experience. It's an incredible mystery, isn't it? We don't know what we are. You know, we don't know. It's a very strange experience. We find ourselves in this world. We find time passing in ways, and as you get older, time passes faster and faster and faster, and it begins to seem almost meaningless. We don't know what we're doing or where we're going. It's a strange experience. It feels strange. Now, for me, the recognition of that strangeness is what first made me interested in literature. Reading Kafka or Hermann Hesse, or things that I used to read when I was younger, Kafka, for example, things which sum up the strangeness of the experience of being here, the dreamlike nature of reality. That's very important to me, and I like images or symbols in books which hint at this. I'll give you an example. I recently read a story by Cortázar, who's a great South American writer. Is he called Julio Cortázar? And he wrote a story, I can't remember what it was called, but it's about people stuck in a traffic jam. And he tells you about these different characters are in different cars. You know, the man in the blue car is an engineer, and there's a nice pretty girl sitting in the car to his right, and so on. And then Hours pass and they're stuck in the same traffic jam. The traffic isn't moving. So they get out of their cars and start talking to each other, and they make friends, and some people don't like each other. And then days pass. So they have to start organising into groups to go and find food in the countryside nearby. And then months pass. The seasons change. It snows, and then the snow goes away and it gets warm again. The engineer who was sitting in the car marries or sleeps with the pretty girl in the car nearby, and she becomes pregnant, and some people become very powerful and admired in the group, and other people become not liked and not very powerful and irrelevant to the group. And they're stuck there for years. And then suddenly, one day, the traffic starts moving. So everybody runs back to their cars and they switch on the ignition and the cars start moving. And then the engineer's driving and he suddenly realises, where's the girl that's having my baby? He can't find her anymore. The car is somewhere else because the different lanes have moved at a different... And I thought it was a beautiful story. Because, of course, it's not just talking about people in a traffic jam. It's talking about the experience of the strangeness of life. We find ourselves almost randomly surrounded by other people who we have to interact with, and then things happen. We make relationships. We hate some of them. We love others. Some of them we love and then hate. Some of them we hate and then love. And then suddenly time passes and everything's rearranged, and the people that we were close to we're not close to anymore, and we're with another group of people. A fantastic story. I thought of this just before I came to Pakistan, because while I'm here, I'm going to be making quite a few journeys, bus journeys mainly, maybe a train journey as well. And I thought that a bus journey, this isn't a story, it's just an idea, it's the beginning of a story maybe. A bus journey is a really good image of life. You find yourself trapped on this vehicle which is moving. I thought that if I wanted to make it accurate, I would have to say that somebody else has paid for my ticket, not me. Somebody's paid for my ticket and they've put me on a bus, and I don't know where it's going. Somebody's put me on this bus rather than another bus. It must have a destination, but I don't know what it is. Hello? You talking to me? No? Okay. You don't know where you're going, or you've forgotten where you're going. You think that you may be a bit mad because you're sitting on this bus and you don't know where you're going, but you're a bit embarrassed to tell other people that you think you're mad because you don't know where you're going. You can't communicate with the driver because he's partitioned off from you. You can try to gesture at him and talk to him. You can try to interpret his expressions and movements, but you can't really communicate properly with him. People get on the bus and people get off the bus, and the people who get on the bus after you get off don't know that you were ever on the bus. Now, there you go, the bus is an image of life. If I write that as a story, I'm not going to write a bus is like life. I'm just going to write a story about a man on a bus, and he doesn't know what the destination is, and he can't communicate with the driver, and he's a bit embarrassed to tell the other people that he doesn't know where he's going.
There's a story in Urdu exactly this way.
Is there?
Exactly like that.
With a bus?
With a bus journey, a short story.
Who's it by?
I don't remember the author, but it's called Hamsafar, I think.
Hamsafar.
I don't remember the author.
It's not translated?
It's if you want to check it out in the intermediate level, it's there in intermediate level textbook. It's by Ashfaq Ahmad.
It's what? Thank you. But it's not translated into English? No.
These people can translate it for you.
Yeah.
Somebody translate it for me and send it to me. So, alright, we have a few minutes left. And in this few minutes, why don't you, in your groups again, just throw ideas at each other, why don't you try to think of some kind of image of the strangeness of life or the passing of time, like this bus journey or like Cortazar's traffic jam. Try and think of some kind of It's a symbol, if you like, a metaphor, an image for life.
Just the people here.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
It's not easy, but try to do it. Just talk to your friends and ideas will come up. Go on, have a go. See if you can come up with an idea.
Just the people here are a microcosm of so much else.
Yeah.
Different backgrounds, different objectives, different aspirations.
So you could write about a room of students or a room full of people as a where it's stated as a
And what they are out there interpreting. And what we derive from our same experience is a view, but I'm sure the various permutations it's going to go. Yes. And maybe, if you're very fortunate, one writer may emerge. And Shyamla, it's been very wonderful. I have to say. Thank you so much. And you have such a great mind. It's all there. I could write a million novels. I can't see the next one. Yes. Good luck. It was such a worthwhile experience. Thank you so much.
sitting in a cafe, looking in a cushioned chair, having clothes because you're numb with it, separated from the world. Collection of short stories, and it's the first story in there.
Robert, thank you. Robert, I have a request.
Yes.
If you can tell everybody which authors to read, which books to read.
Okay. All right. Is that working?
Whatever, you know.
Thank you. There were various good ideas there. I didn't hear enough of them, unfortunately, but there was a good one about a rickshaw. And there was a good one as well about the change between. There was one about a rickshaw here, and one there about upgrading from a rickshaw to a minibus. Some good ideas. I hope that was fruitful for you. I hope it gave you. Of course, I mean, I called it 10 rules. There are no rules. You make your own rules as you go along, and these ones are just very arbitrary ones. Don't think these are the 10 rules and this is all I need, or that's the only thing I need. It's a journey of self-discovery being a writer, so I hope that you will all write, and continue to write. Whether you try to get published or not, I hope that you just write because it's good for you, it's good for the brain, it's good for the soul, it's good for thinking about yourself in the world. Now there was a question here, which books should you read? I can't answer the question. I mean, I can tell you, go on.
Subjective.
Subjectively.
What do you think?
Well, I can tell you who I think are the great writers, you know, and from my limited reading, which is culturally specific as well. I mean, I think Shakespeare is a great writer. I think Tolstoy is an incredible novelist who everybody should read. I think James Joyce, I don't know if everybody should read it, but I think James Joyce incredible. I keep going back to all of James Joyce's stuff and reading it again and again, just for the music of it, you know. Some of James Joyce is difficult to understand, but you can just read it out loud for the music and for the ideas that it sparks off, and don't worry too much about understanding it. When I wrote that novel, I was very influenced by American realists of the second half of the 20th century, specifically John Updike, who wrote the Ragged series, and Saul Bellow, who again, politically and as a human being, I think he was awful, but as a writer, as somebody who could develop characters and a sense of the dense texture of reality, and whose rhythm is wonderful, I think he was unsurpassed, Saul Bellow. At the moment, I'm reading a lot of Latin American stuff. I like Roberto Bolaño, who's become famous just in the last few years. He's dead, but he became famous just in the last few years. Roberto Bolaño. I like Arabic poetry, especially contemporary or modern Arabic poetry. People like Nizar Tabbani, Mahmoud Darwish, Adonis. I like, the best person I've discovered in the last year is Mantle from Pakistan. He's a great, great writer, and I don't know what, I mean, he's famous in South Asia. He's not nearly as famous as he should be in the rest of the world, because it's as good as Chekhov, you know. I mean, if somebody asks me, you know, recommend some technically brilliant short stories, I would give them a collection of Mantle's stories. I think they're really, really good. But that's subjective. I mean, at different times of my life, my influences are different. It's constantly changing. So you should all develop your own ideas of what your favourite writers are.
What do you think about Irish Murder?
I haven't read Irish. I haven't read it. It's my biggest dream.
Lewis Carroll.
Lewis Carroll is great, and James Joyce was, Lewis Carroll who wrote Alice in Wonderland. James Joyce was very much influenced by Lewis Carroll. If you know the poem Jabberwocky, yes. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the claws that catch, the jaws that snatch. Beware the Jabberwock, and shun the fruminous bandersnatch. These are made-up words. 'Twas brillig, and the slimy toves did gyre and gimble in the wave. Made-up words, but which influenced Joyce very much.
Somebody said, I mean, regarding Joyce, I mean, I'm a big fan of Joyce, but I was really struck. Last year, some really capable person pointed out that Dubliners is fine, but when it comes to portrait of an artist as a young man, it's laboured. And then he started reading that, and then I really got that what laboured means. This is what we see in Margaret Atwood, laboured writing, laboured. So Joyce, after all these years, came across very differently. It really did, I did understand that it was laboured. So the word laboured, you get values to these things like laboured.
Well, James Joyce's writing is definitely contrived and artificial, and it's deliberately so. But I don't find it laboured, because the word, personally I don't, the word laboured seems to suggest not just hard work, but kind of unnecessary hard work, and it's something which isn't flowing. I think he does flow. I think that the sound effect of his writing is beautiful and does flow, but it is cerebral writing. It's definitely intellectual. He's playing so many games with language.
One more question, which is cerebral. So I wrote something and that very person said this is like, you know, it's called concrete poetry, and some people liked it elsewhere, but this guy specifically said and he made a face. So concrete poetry, the big thing is, if I tend to write like that, you know, cerebral, it's extremely cerebral what I write. Does that have a place in this day and age? If I write something, will people like that?
Yeah, I think that you have to be who you are, and you have to write what you want to write. Now, whether or not that fits with the fashions of the time, with the demands of the marketplace at the moment, is another matter.
Will that fit?
And I wouldn't worry about it too much. I wouldn't worry about it, because if you could say perhaps that if something is brilliant, it doesn't matter what it is, you will force the world to recognise it. You know, Joyce's Ulysses didn't fit. Yet it was so good that people had to take it seriously. So whatever you write, if you write it well enough, you will grab people's attention. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is that there are many great writers who get no recognition at all because they don't have luck, because the right people don't read their book at the right moment, because it doesn't fit with the fashion or the market at that moment. That's the sad reality. The world is not a just place. You shouldn't write for fame or for money, because in most cases you won't get it. It's very few writers become famous and rich. It's a bad reason to write. I mean, I hope if I become famous and rich, I would love to, but that's not why I write, because you have to sustain yourself. It has to ultimately be something you're doing because you have to do it. Because your soul demands it.
If somebody said, last question, really last, if somebody said Daniel Moinuddin book, which was like a big hit, everybody bought it, In Other Rooms, Other Wonders, which is like from the Truman Capote. But I mean, that is badly written. Now get this, badly written. You don't say and over and over again. You don't repeat the same word in the same paragraph. I mean, coming from, like, you know, it's badly written.
Now you're giving your 10 rules. Or...
No.
You can't say and over again.
You can. Right.
You can't use the same word in the same paragraph.
The stories are great.
Teachers used to tell me at school, you can't start a sentence with and.
So does it really...
You can't start a sentence with but or because, of course you can.
So does it really matter what people, you know, that it's badly written or not, and no matter what, still sells.
I read that book. I don't agree it's badly written. I thought it was well written. But
I was surprised.
Everybody has their own way of judging. It worked. It's obviously worked. We have to give. I mean, it's like I liked that book, but the Nadim Aslan book I was talking about earlier, I didn't really like in most respects. But nevertheless, it worked because a lot of people bought it. I mean, Stephen King. It's not my, I told you about the Stephen King book, which made me at every moment ask, how are these people going to survive this situation? It's not my kind of writing. I don't think it's good writing. I couldn't pick out a paragraph and say this is beautiful or profound or whatever. Yet it works. I have to recognise that people, he weaves a magic spell because millions of people will buy it and will obsessively read every page of the book. So, as I said at the beginning, read widely. Don't give yourself a narrow idea of this is good literature, I have to do it like this, I have to follow these set of rules. All kinds of different people are writing all kinds of different books and succeeding with their different markets. Yes?
I have a question. It actually comes back to one of the rules.
It
is, how do you know you're not fitting with the stereotype? When I, for example, if I'm speaking to you, I am selecting unconsciously some judgments.